everybody, welcome back to my channel. My last video was showing you the garden tour of all of my outdoor plants and succulents, so I thought it would only be appropriate to then show you all of my indoor houseplants. So to start off my collection is this Monstera. I actually got this Monstera back in 2020, and that's actually what hit off my indoor plant collection. The Monstera has been propagated numerous times, about 3 to 4 times. And a really cool thing about this plant particularly is that it does really well in water. I actually have one currently in the restroom that I'll show a little bit later in the tour. This one is definitely a great beginner plant to start with because it is pretty low maintenance. It likes indirect light. If you're wondering, this planter pot was bought from TJMaxx, and then this planter stand was made by both my boyfriend and me. This one up here is actually a cutting off of the main Monstera plant. Really excited to see basically another full plant made off of my original one. And then the one right by it is a pothos. This pothos was actually given to me by a friend. She didn't want to care for the plant anymore, and I was happy to take it off her hands. The cool thing about pothos is they're probably one of the most beginner-friendly plants, just how fast and rapidly they grow, but also how low maintenance they are, and they're very easy to propagate. If you just take a cutting and then put it in a water bath and just leave it there, new leaves will grow from it, so you don't actually even have to put it in soil. Water will more than do the trick. These three are my next plants. The first one is the Dieffenbachia. This plant was probably the only plant I actually bought from an actual store outside of a nursery. So I bought this one from Lowe's. I will say it's probably one of my lesser favorite plants only because it looks really droopy, and don't get me wrong, the droop is the natural nature of the plant. It does kind of flop outward. And if you're wondering, the planter pot is from Home Goods, and then the planter stand once again was homemade. ZZ plant is probably the easiest to maintain because these plants actually do really well in low light scenarios, and they can actually deal with being neglected as in they don't need much water and sunlight, and these plants grow massive. So I originally got this plant from Costco. I think it was like $25, and this is only 2/3 of the collection. The other 1/3 has been propagated elsewhere. And the cool thing about this plant specifically, the ZZ plant, is the root system grows in little bulbs. So if you do end up wanting to separate it into different compartments or what have you, it's very easy to pull apart the bulbs, and you can just repot the bulbs in your own liking or anywhere you want. As you can see, this one, the tallest one, is the newest growth, and it's easily like 2 or 3 or 4 feet long. So these are definitely a statement indoor plant. I can see this being kind of like the central focus piece. These plants are a symbol of strength and fortune in Chinese culture, and the bamboo, it's stupidly easy taking care of them. All they need to be is in water. The bamboo plant, if you actually take it outside of its own container, it can actually grow to the size of trees. So I have kept it and contained it in this thing, but when it first started, it was the size of just the stalk itself. One of my oldest plants, it is probably 8 to 9 years old. This plant right here is the only cactus that I have indoors. It is called the prickly pear plant. And the cool backstory about this is not only the plant, but also the planter pot was found in the dumpster or nearby the dumpster. This whole thing was essentially free. And I remember when I first got the prickly pear cactus, it was all shriveled and just not doing well. And it's really cool to see the progress this plant has made. If you notice, the lighter green sections of the plant on the top are where the new growth started to happen. All to say, this has had a 180 transformation. It is definitely looking a lot happier now, and I'm grateful to see that it's growing so fruitfully and so tall. So I quickly mentioned earlier that the Monstera plant is very easy to propagate, and this is one of the examples of my water propagation. I just chopped it off and it's growing roots very fruitfully, and I've probably put this in water for about near a month now, and the roots have grown. And at this point, if you want to transfer it into soil, that's totally the point to do it. But if you didn't want to and just wanted to keep it in water, it's totally okay growing in water as well. Now this one is the most recent pickup in my collection. This is called the Ficus trinicae, and it is part of the rubber plant family. This is a variegated, which basically just means it's like a tricolor plant. You always want to do your due diligence and check the base of the plant, because when I first bought this plant, it was wrapped in a netting at the root. And prior to knowing, I just thought that I was killing the plant because all the leaves were dropping. But in reality, it was just because the root system was closed off, so it wasn't allowing the roots to grow out and really do its course. So that's the second I cut open the netting for encapsulating the roots, it was totally fine, and it actually started growing rapidly after. So you actually even see the most top, or the newest installment of the Ficus trinicae has a leaf that's almost unfurling. And so yeah, that's really cool to see, and it's very large. These leaves are probably easily like a foot long or near a foot long. And I also wanted to quickly mention, if you notice this little yellow sticker, if you struggle with having gnats in your houseplants or any sort of bug that lives in the soil, I really recommend having these yellow sticky traps. The whole premise is that these gnats are really attracted to bright colors. So when you put something like this in your plant, they're going to dart to it and then inevitably get stuck onto the sticky trap. So I really recommend that. So this is probably the most ingenious installment that I did to show off my plants. We're currently in my restroom, if you couldn't tell, but I really enjoy starting my days seeing some life form in my restroom, like as I'm brushing my teeth or washing my face. It just makes me really happy. So all I did was I took this wooden slat that was actually from a deconstructed bed, I stained it and then attached it to the windowsill just so that there's an extension so the plants have a comfortable spot to live on. As for my collection along the shelf, most if not all of them are all pothos, and intermittently throughout them you have a jade plant from a succulent and another Monstera propagation. The front ones right here are actually ceramic pieces that I bought from a thrift store, and I believe these two at least were from the same ceramicists. And the cool thing about pothos, I've only really experimented with pothos and successfully gotten an outcome, is that pothos actually don't need drainage holes, which is super convenient because I know the feeling of finding a very beautiful pot to put your plants in, but then being torn if you wanted to destroy it by cutting a hole in it or not. But I have experimented and can confidently say that pothos do not need drainage holes. So all the ones that I have here are not with drainage, and they still grow really fruitfully. So that was my full collection. It is a small but mighty collection, and I'm excited to grow it all the more. If you have learned anything from this video or found anything interesting, if it potentially interested you in starting your indoor collection, do let me know in the comments below. I'd love to engage with you, answer any of your questions if you have any. Without further ado, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye-bye!